Hi, my name is Benjamin. I'm 9 years sober. I continue every day to look to help others, to give back to those who have helped me, and to the community that's given me everything back into my life.
I'm Heather Champion. I'm a licensed mental health counselor with a private practice. I met Ben while working at an outpatient treatment center called The Retreat that's not here anymore. We've maintained our friendship since then and enjoy taking time to talk about therapy and our lives as champions.
Disclaimer: the content of this video is intended for informational use only. It is in no way intended as a replacement for medical or psychological advice. Should you have a medical or psychological issue, please consult with a medical professional. Hey, everybody, it is the Real Champions podcast again. I am Heather Champion.
I'm Benjamin Champion.
And today I was just chastising my friend Ben here because I got to watch the season finale of The Pitt on HBO recently and I loved it. And I told him to watch it and he said he tried and it wasn't that much for him. So he's like, I'll give it another shot. And so we were just kind of talking about some of the storylines on it, and I was telling him about how I love that show. I feel like they got all the awards last year for award season, and they will get even more this year because it was that good. I know that, and I was explaining to Ben that a lot of my clients have been watching The Pit, and they really relate to some of the storylines that are on there. And it's not even that like the storyline reminds them of something; it just brings stuff up for them that they feel like I want to talk to you about this. I want you to, want to think about what this means to me. And that's, I think, a really good place to start some of our sessions, like when my clients do t watch something like The Pit, and they're inspired by maybe Willie's story or Dr. Robbie's story or what Dana's going through, and they want to talk about it. I know one of the storylines that has come up a little bit in conversation is in season two, there's a woman who has lung cancer and she decides she doesn't want to go on anymore. And there's a question there about the two younger doctors go to Dr. Robbie and they're like, so we're just going to let her die? And he says to them, sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for your patient is to allow them to die. I watched an interview recently of Noah Wiley on when he talked about the inspiration for the show and what he puts into the show to make it as realistic as possible. As we all kind of know, at least, but especially if you're my age, if you're middle aged, you remember Noah Wiley when he was a cute young doctor on ER. Um, Now he's come back, and he's no longer the cute young doctor, the resident. Now he's the attending, and he's teaching other doctors how to doctor, and he's doing the show from a perspective of a very tired doctor, that is done a lot, um, and been through a lot.
That's
You're
interesting.
you're
This
thinking,
show is picked up a lot. Like, and just what you're saying from our clientele that we kind of know when we're talking about our clientele, what their backgrounds are,
right?
to the people in my life who are, more blue collar workers and their attachment to the more human side of these things.
Oh yeah.
Um, has been really interesting to me because a lot of my friends who are telling me about this do not work in our field, but
Right.
they're the ones suggesting, hey, this talks a lot about things you talk about. You may be interested. And just to see it from somebody else's perspective and kind of walking into our world of, oh, this is what you guys deal with somewhat on a daily basis.
Right.
Um, like you said about letting the patient die a peaceful death. I mean, we deal with that a lot too, with a lot of clients that come in and out. And I always tell clients, sometimes the unfortunate thing to say is it might be better that they're gone for them, you know, and
Mhm.
having to deal with that moral conflict of, It's hard to say out loud, but truthfully, sometimes it is easier.
Yeah, and it's like I remember I forget, I think you were working with us at IOP back in the day. And I don't know if you remember, there was a woman who was coming in. She had a really bad alcohol problem, and one day she came in and she was completely like schnockered. We couldn't get her to do anything. She was basically kind of half in her pajamas, half dressed. We had to keep her aside from everybody else, and we called the EMTs to take her on a Baker Act. I don't remember that day. Um, you do remember that day.
I think so.
The MTs were talking to us and they were like talking about like what we do. And they said to us, there's something that we really get aggravated about. And we were just like, well, what? They're like, when we Narcan people and they get mad at us. And I was like, well, when you Narcan somebody, you're putting them into precipitated withdrawals. I'm like, so a way of describing precipitated withdrawals, have you ever had the flu? Have you ever had, remember like COVID, like people who got COVID really, really bad? It was painful. It was sweating. It was like your bones hurt. Every part of your body aches, right? Ever have that happen? Yeah. Well, imagine that times like a million. And that's precipitated withdrawals. And so when you Narcan somebody, yes, you're saving their life. However, now if they don't put more opiates in their system, they're going to go feel that. And that is worse than death. So sometimes somebody who is an opiate addict, they would prefer to die than to be saved.
Yep.
And sometimes that's why they're using.
I did that as my and I know what to call it, my end of term essay for my psychology class
Mhm.
is would you give your friend, let's say they need to go to the detox and they need one more hit to make it to detox or let them suffer in the pain. I made that my kind of the decision if you hit the kids with the train or if you hit the old lady. Because of it, it's very hard. It's unless you're in that person's shoes or ever been through it, you don't know what that pain is. And like you said, to them it is easier to die sometimes than deal with that pain.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think we need shows like these to let other people see this other side of this, that
Mhm.
us mental health professionals and nursing professionals, we don't just go home at the end of the day and just chalk it up to a 9 to 5 clock in and out. These are lifelong decisions we have to make and care about these people for.
Right. At the end of season two, Dr. Robbie has like a conversation where he really talks about how much the job has been ripping him apart, and that he needs a break, but he's got nothing if he walks away. Um, and I think that, a lot of us in this field understand that if we like we've given our whole lives to it, right? And I'm like, me as a character similar to Dr. Robbie, I don't have a family at home. I have three cats and two dogs. um that's my family. And there's a scene in it where he's talking about how he was supposed to have a house on a lake with a bunch of kids at that point in his life, right? And so, like, Noah Wiley's around my age. So, that was always the plan all those years ago. And it never happened because we put so much of our lives into our work.
Yeah.
And we have gone through our lives saving people's lives. I have a collection of thank you cards that people have given me because I saved their lives or I saved their children's lives. I also have a
This stay
collection
with it.
of I also have a collection of mass cards for those
Mm.
that we couldn't save. And those the ones that we couldn't save, those are the ones who sit with me the most.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things about and the most rewarding things about these jobs is I think for a lot of the clients that I've known that have passed, one of the greatest gifts out of it is I got time to spend with them. I got to see the other side of them, the trying side, the side that wanted to do these things right for the people in their lives. And that is, I think, for myself, one of the things that keeps me doing this job. is trying to save that next one so you don't have to do those things. You don't have to make those calls or look at those postcards.
Mhm.
Is Yeah, this is a hard job if you don't have something to go home to. But for
Right.
me, I've used my dogs as the greatest indication. If I am holding on to stuff and bringing that home with me, my dogs will let me know before any human can because they will feel that shift in my energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm reading up on this show, and everything I've seen so far is a lot of like medical professionals. And this one I'm reading right now says an emergency room, Harborview's psychiatry emergency room, said they're doing like textbook definitions of what like a psychosis is. And that's interesting. That's really cool to me. One, people
Right.
can put that into playwriting,
Right.
but two, people need to see this so that when their loved ones, like you said, are going through this, they have a connection point. Be like, oh, I saw this on the show. I'm not a doctor, but now I know enough to know this isn't right.
Right. Yeah.
And if
Well, I
that's the
mean,
least they're doing, that's awesome.
right. So this season they did, I told you about the story of Willie, the alcoholic who dies. They also have a kid who has a psychotic break come in, and they go through what that is and what's going on. And they explain it in a lot of detail. They also show one of the doctors has a substance use problem. Actually, two of them. One's in recovery. One just came back because he got discovered at the end of season one. Um, so they talk about that. Um, they talk about rape in it this season. They go through what that's like. They go into just healthcare fatigue, healthcare worker fatigue. So
Yep.
they talk about like there's quite a few of the different doctors, like Dr. Robbie, there's Nurse Dana, there's also some other doctors who are like going through the fatigue. There's one of the student doctors who completely loses it and can't come back. And that's like a real thing, like it is. When I say this season really focuses on mental health, it's the main thing going on in there is mental health. And like when I watched the interview with Noah Wiley when he talked about that, I mean, like the man looked like he was tearing up as he talked about it because it was so important to him that this be the message that gets conveyed. He looked like he was really there in that interview, and he works really hard. And they're actually already writing season three. They're in
Okay.
pre-production writing. And they're getting ready to start shooting season three. So very exciting that this is not one of those shows where you have to wait 3 years for the next season. They're employing like real ER doctors and nurses, people who actually know what's going on, and they make it as real as possible. The other thing that he had said in that interview, which I thought was super interesting, was that they are shooting it at eye level
Hmm.
so that it's as if you're in the room with them. They're not
So
looking
putting
down
this,
and they're not looking up. They're at eye level. So it's like if you were in the room. The other thing, which I thought was really interesting, is that they don't play any music on the show. You know how like in a drama, usually they like play that music to tell you how you're supposed to feel? Well,
yeah.
they're not doing that in this show. There is
Oh,
music in the background. And the thing is, like, I never noticed. I was so intensely involved in what was going on the screen that I didn't notice until I like was watching this interview with Noah Wiley and I realized, like, oh yeah, there is no music. They don't have music to show you when you're supposed to be feeling something. You just feel it
maybe that's why I didn't like it.
because they didn't have music.
Because yeah, because there was no emotional point for me to know I was supposed to. Because when I turned it on, like I was saying, I tried to watch it, and again, I think this is good for some people, because I had to turn it off within the first 10 minutes. Now, I wasn't fully focused on it, but I think what you just said, because there was no music to let my brain know, okay, this is a TV show, focus on it. The hearing of the crying and the women screaming in the background triggered my mind of, oh, this isn't a show. This is like something real in my mind.
Mm.
That made sense for me, right? When you just said that. If I didn't hear like a starting point, like the Law and Order do,
Yeah.
my brain didn't calculate it as a show. It calculated, in my sense, when I listened to it, as, oh, I'm at work.
Hmm.
And I think that's why my mind didn't like it at first, because it triggered that work response
Right.
out of a weekend setting.
Right.
That's interesting. I'll have to pay attention to that when I turn it on tonight,
Yeah.
if that's maybe what threw my brain off when I started it.
Yeah. That could have been. I did mention it to another client of mine, and she started watching it, and she's like, and I saw her this weekend, and I said, I told her about it on Wednesday, and I saw her again on Saturday, and I said, she's like, oh, I started watching The Pit, and I was like, really? I'm like, how far did you get? She's like, I'm halfway through season two.
Dedicated.
And she was like, and I was like, it's that good, right? She goes, yes, it's that good.
Okay.
When she got into it, she couldn't stop watching it. And I was like, yeah, it's really, and she even had a few things that she wanted to talk about, from the show that she picked up on in the show. Like I said, it's a lot of stuff to talk about in there. Um, and I think one of the biggest things is like caregiver fatigue.
Yeah.
How and I know like we don't work in the ER, but the thing like they're much more rapid and they're responding. When I worked in an inpatient hospital setting, it was definitely hard,
Yeah.
because you got people coming in right off the street. Like they still got fresh track marks on their arm. And you're trying to get them calm enough where we can give them a sedative and put them to sleep for a couple of days so that they're the worst, the precipitated withdrawals they're sleeping through. And then trying to get them to like somewhat coherently tell you like what their phone number is and who their emergency contact is.
Yeah.
And sometimes those situations, right? Like I remember at times hearing screaming in the entry area and getting up and coming out and like, what's going on out here? Not to mention, like I've got my own stuff I got to take care of, but now there's this person, my boss isn't there, so it's like, well, let me go take care of it and try to calm this person down and just sit there and talk to them very quietly, very like directly, like, okay, I understand you're uncomfortable right now. All right, like, well, I'm not yelling, you do understand that I am not yelling at you right now. I'm not raising my voice. But I need you to do the same. Can we bring it down a notch? Can we do this? Can we do that? Um, and helping them to get a little bit more stable. Like in that location, that is really, really hard. That is where a lot of the deaths that I dealt with, that's where they occurred. Whereas in those inpatient centers was that we worked with somebody for a while at the inpatient center. One of those people was on a revolving door, because it was a full continuum of care. And as soon as they got to this particular level of care, they would relapse and end up right back. And I was the frequent relapser therapist at that point, at the primary therapist for the women's unit. And I remember we used to do my group because there wasn't enough space in the building to do group therapy for us to do our groups. And if you've ever been to inpatient treatment, that the at 10 o'clock in the morning, usually somewhere between 9:30 and 10, primary group starts, and that is with your primary therapist. That's the main person that you're assigned to. And we usually stay in primary group and for up until lunch for sort of like 10 to 12-ish. And every one of the primary therapists has a group that they run at that point. And that's like your process group. That's where we kind of go through everything that's been going on. We do our primary of our treatment happens in that group. And in that treatment center, I was the most junior as far as time was concerned. So I had to go and find a place to do my group. So I decided that I was going to take my girls out on the smoking patio in the front yard of our building. And it was this huge kind of gazebo that was out there. It was covered from the rain, so it was fine as when we're raining. And there was lots of tables and chairs so we could sit and we could do things. And they weren't allowed to smoke, even though there was butts everywhere. Like, no, we can't smoke while we're in group. But you know, every morning we would be sitting there and the druggy buggy from the lower levels of care would pull up and everybody who had relapsed the night before would get off and they would go right back into the nurse's station which was right in the front of the building. And this one person, like she knew when she relapsed and came back, Heather was going to be her therapist, and she knew exactly where my group was. So she, instead of like getting off and going right into the nurse's station, she would go into the nurse's station. So she said, and she would say, "I'm going to be in group. Come get me when you need me."
Hmm.
So she would walk her butt across the parking lot over to where we were, and she'd sit down. I'm like, "What the hell happened now?" But one of the things that would always happen is that that girl would give the best advice. And she was so talented at what we do. And my boss and I were just like, just do a little bit of work with us. If you do the work, then you'll get better and you could be a therapist like we are. And because we see so much potential in you. And she'd be like, I can't look at that. I can't look at that part of myself. And the last time she relapsed and came back, she said, if this happens again, I'm not going to come back. I'm not going to readmit. And I was like, oh, come on, you know, you can do this, you can do this. And she was like, no. And actually, the way it worked in that place was that if you relapse at the lower levels of care, then what they did is they took a whole bunch of big black garbage bags and they just threw all your stuff in them. They didn't let you pack, and they would just bring you back to inpatient and hand you like two garbage bags, and that's all you got. Well, she ended up getting one of the garbage bags with her kitchen stuff in it, and she had a canister of coffee. And she comes walking in the back where all of the clinical offices were. And she comes to my boss and I, and she's like, do you guys have coffee machine back here? Because oh, no, we've got like in the cafeteria, we'll get our coffee. And she was like, oh, well, they gave this to me. I don't know why they thought that I would want this. I'm like, that we're like, oh yeah, they just throw everything into a garbage bag. She's like, well, do you guys want it? And my boss is like, I'll take it. I'll take the coffee. He's like, I'll bring it home, whatever. I'm like, all right. I'm like, I don't drink Folgers, so it's okay. So in any event, my boss left that canister of coffee on her desk. And about a week later, she relapsed again. I saw her walking through the building, but she never readmitted, like she said. And a few days after that, we got the word that she went home and relapsed and died. And I sat with my boss to process that. Like the two of us had become really, really close to that girl. And the coffee that she left with us was still sitting on my boss's desk. And the way that we kind of had to make sense of it was that, you know, sure, her pain was over. What she was experiencing was over. And that she saved so many lives because of the things that she talked about when she came back and how she didn't want to see anybody else suffer the way that she did. So, somebody a long time ago told me that our soul chooses the life that we want to live based on the lesson of that life. And when the lesson is learned, the life is over.
Yeah. And I think those are some of the best clients because they teach us why we do what we do. I think they're the biggest reminders of we made it for a reason, and what they taught us was for a reason for us to be the ones to go share that message continuously.
Yeah.
Those are the hardest stories, but I think some of the ones that make us stay where we are. As many days that we want to quit and go find something easier or less on our minds, is those are the patients I think of, the ones that we couldn't save, or in this girl's case, the one who was brave enough to know that it was too hard for her and might as well help others while she's still here. I think that's braver than most of us could ever be. And I always give those credits to those ones who do everything they can, and it's unfortunate they don't make it, but it's about what you learn from them, and we get to go carry on their mission. And I think that's the best part.
Yeah. So anyway, it looks like we're out of time for today. Ben, you got to watch the pit. You got to
I'm
get
going to.
through the discomfort so we can talk a little bit more about it, and it's not just me doing all the talking, okay?
That's my goal.
All right, guys. We will see you all again in 2 weeks. Have a good one.
Adios.
Bye. Real Champions Podcast, Season 2, Episode 5, The Pit. What does it mean to be a champion when that's your name? The Real Champions Podcast is co-hosted by Heather Champion and Benjamin Champion. It's edited by Heather Champion. Produced by Maitri Counseling Services, all rights reserved. Questions or comments can be referred to Heather at Maitri Therapy, MAITRI-therapy.com.
You are not alone. Remember, if you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-TALK. For local help, dial 211 on your phone to be connected to resources in your area. If you experience mental health or substance abuse issues, please call the National Alliance or Mental Health or NAMNI at 1-800-950-NAMNI. Or in a crisis, text NAMI, NAMI, to 741-741. Check out the NAMI website, nami.org, for additional resources.